Fog hung over Harpersville that morning when it all began. The town was waking up slowly. Factory whistles were still silent, school buses hadn't yet hit the roads. At 847 Main Street, Lisa Turner stood at the kitchen window with a cup of coffee in her hands, watching the morning light break through the misty haze. Her phone vibrated. A text message from Mia. "I can feel your anxiety. Is everything okay?" Lisa wasn't surprised. In their 31 years, the twins had learned to sense each other's emotional state even from a distance. Mia worked the night shift at St. Mary's Hospital and was just finishing her shift, but somehow she always knew when Lisa was having a hard time. "Him again," Lisa typed, without specifying who exactly. Mia would understand. Owen Powell. The man Lisa had been dating for 2 years and trying to get rid of for the last 6 months. A mechanic at a local auto parts factory, 34 years old, with the hands of a mechanic and the temper of a volcano. At the beginning of their relationship, his jealousy seemed like a sign of love. Constant phone calls, unexpected visits to work, demands to know where she was and with whom. Lisa took it all as caring. As a school psychologist, she should have recognized the warning signs earlier. But when you're inside a situation, objectivity becomes a luxury. In recent months, Owen's behavior had become increasingly erratic. He would show up at her house at all hours of the day and night. He left dozens of voicemails, filled with pleas and threats. When Lisa changed her phone number, he somehow found the new one. When she avoided her usual places, he would show up where she least expected him. "I'm on my way," came the reply from Mia. 15 minutes later, a woman identical to Lisa stood at the door. The only way to tell the sisters apart was by the details. Mia's hair was pulled back into a practical nurse's ponytail, and she had a small scar on her left arm from a childhood injury. Otherwise, they were exact copies of each other. Same height, 5 feet 6 inches, same chestnut hair, same brown eyes. Even their voices sounded identical on the phone. "Did he come again?" Mia asked as she walked into the house. "At 3 in the morning. He was banging on the bedroom window. He said he knew I was awake, that he could feel my presence." Mia frowned. As a nurse, she dealt with the aftermath of domestic violence every day. Broken ribs, bruises that came from a fall, women who whispered the truth only when their husbands left the room. "Did you call the police?" What would I tell them? He was banging on the window? Harris will just shrug and say that as long as he hasn't hit me, there's nothing they can do. Detective Ray Harris had been with the Harpersville Police Department for 24 years. A 46-year-old veteran who had seen enough to become cynical, but not enough to lose his humanity. In a town where everyone knew everyone else, his job often turned into family therapy. Domestic disputes, drunken brawls at Thomas Green's bar, the occasional shoplifting, that was the extent of crime in Harpersville. In recent months, Owen Powell's name had appeared regularly in Harris's reports. Complaints from neighbors about noise, calls about a suspicious person near Lisa Turner's house, one incident at the bar when Owen smashed a chair against the wall after seeing Lisa with her co-workers. Each time, Harris came, filed a report, but there were no legal grounds for arrest. "The system doesn't work until something serious happens," Harris often told his wife, and every time he hoped that something serious would not happen in his town. That same day, around noon, Owen Powell finished his shift at the factory and headed to the Old Oak Bar. Thomas Green's establishment was the heart of the working-class part of Harpersville, a dark place that smelled of beer and tobacco, where local men discussed football, politics, and women, usually in that order. Thomas Green, the 39-year-old bar owner, had known Owen since school. They weren't friends, but in a small town, knowing each other from school created a certain level of familiarity. Thomas had seen Owen change in recent months. The once cheerful and outgoing guy had turned into something dark and unpredictable. "The usual?" Thomas asked when Owen took a seat at the bar. "Double," Owen replied, without looking up. Thomas poured the whiskey and placed the glass in front of Owen. The bar was fairly empty, a few workers from the morning shift and 2 pensioners playing dominoes. It was a quiet weekday. "I hear you've got problems with Lisa Turner," Thomas began cautiously. Owen looked up sharply. His eyes were red, and not just from lack of sleep. "Who told you?" "Owen, everyone knows everything around here. People see you driving past her house at night. They see you waiting for her outside the school." "I love her," Owen said quietly, but there was something desperate in his voice. "We've been together for 2 years. 2 years! And she just decides it's over? That's not how it works." Thomas continued wiping glasses, choosing his words carefully. He had known the Turner family for many years. Lisa and Mia had grown up in Harpersville, where their parents had run a small stationery store until they were killed in a car accident 5 years ago. The sisters were left alone, but their bond only grew stronger. Thomas remembered how they would come to the bar on Friday evenings, order a beer each, and sit in the corner talking as if the rest of the world didn't exist. "Maybe you should give her some time. If it's real love, she'll come back." Owen downed his whiskey and gestured for another. "Time?" He laughed bitterly. "She doesn't have time to think. She has that little sister who's turning her against me. Mia has always hated me, from the very beginning. She's poisoning Lisa's mind." It was true, though not entirely. Mia really hadn't trusted Owen from the first time they met. A nurse's intuition, a habit of reading people by small details, tense shoulders, an evasive gaze, a handshake that was too firm. But the main reason was not intuition, but the fact that Lisa had started to change after she began her relationship with Owen. She became more careful with her words, laughed less, and constantly checked her phone. "Twins have a special bond," Thomas said diplomatically. "An abnormal bond," Owen snapped. "They're 31 years old and still acting like teenagers. Mia can't accept that Lisa has a man." At that moment, the bar door opened and Detective Harris walked in. He wasn't in uniform, jeans and a plain shirt, but his presence changed the atmosphere in the room. Conversations grew quieter, and several patrons glanced at him surreptitiously. Harris walked up to the bar and nodded to Thomas. "Coffee, if you have any." "Sure." Harris noticed Owen, but didn't acknowledge him. In a small town, chance encounters with people from your reports were inevitable. Owen finished his whiskey, left the money on the bar, and headed for the door, but stopped and turned around. "Ray!" he called to the detective. Harris turned around. "What if someone is trying to ruin your life? What if people are turning the person you love against you? What do you do then?" The question sounded like a challenge, but Owen's voice was more pained than aggressive. "You go to the law," Harris replied calmly, "or a family therapist, or you just let them go." Owen nodded as if he had received the answer he expected and left the bar. Harris watched him go, then looked at Thomas. "How long has he been here?" "About 40 minutes. He's had 3 double whiskeys." "What was he talking about?" Thomas hesitated. In a small town, a bartender plays the role of a priest. People trust him with their secrets in exchange for a drink and sympathy. But when a cop asks direct questions, diplomacy becomes more difficult. "About Lisa Turner. He can't accept their breakup." Harris nodded. He already knew that. "Did he threaten her?" "Not directly, but he talked about his sister, about how she was turning Lisa against him." "Thomas, if he says anything specific again, call me right away. Don't wait until tomorrow. Don't think it's just empty words. Call me." After the detective left, the bar grew quiet. Thomas realized that the situation was more serious than he had thought. Nothing much ever happened in Harpersville, but when it did, it affected everyone. Meanwhile, Lisa and Mia were sitting in the kitchen of their home on Main Street, planning their next steps. Lisa had already contacted a lawyer about a restraining order, but the process was slow and required documentary evidence of harassment. "Maybe you should move in with me for a while," Mia suggested. She was renting an apartment in a new part of town, far away from the places Owen liked to hang out. "I don't want him to feel like he won," Lisa replied. "This house is all we have left of our parents. I won't let him make me run away." Mia understood her sister's pride, but her concern grew with each passing day. The connection between the twins worked both ways. If Lisa felt Mia's anxiety, Mia felt Lisa's fear, even when she tried to hide it. "Then I'll come by every day after work," Mia said, "until this situation is resolved." Lisa took her sister's hand. Their fingers intertwined automatically, as they had when they were children, when they weathered thunderstorms, or their parents' arguments together. "What would I do without you?" Lisa said quietly. "We'll never know," Mia replied. "We're a team." But even as she said the words, Mia sensed that something fundamental was changing. Owen Powell wasn't just an annoying ex-boyfriend. He was a man on the edge, and Mia had worked in a hospital long enough to know that when people reach that point, they are capable of things they would never have considered in their right mind. That evening, when Mia left for her night shift, Lisa was left alone. She locked all the doors, checked the windows, and drew the curtains, but she didn't feel safe. She heard Owen's footsteps in every sound and saw his silhouette in every shadow. At midnight, the phone rang. It was an unknown number. Lisa didn't answer. The phone went silent but rang again a minute later. And again. On the fourth ring, she picked up the phone. "Hello, sunshine," she heard the familiar voice say. "Owen, leave me alone." "I can't. You know I can't." There was something new in his voice, a cold calmness that was more frightening than his previous outbursts of rage. "We're done. Please accept that. Nothing is over until I say it's over." Lisa hung up. Her hands were shaking. The phone rang again. The morning of October 15th began as usual, but Lisa was awakened by a knock on the door. The clock read 6:30 a.m. Through the peephole, she saw Owen standing there with a bouquet of wilted roses in his hands. His eyes were red, his clothes rumpled. He obviously hadn't slept all night. "Lisa, I know you're in there. Open up, we need to talk." She stood at the door, trying to breathe quietly. Her heart was beating so loudly that she thought he could hear it through the wooden panel. "Lisa!" Owen's voice grew louder. "I'm not leaving until we talk like human beings." The neighbors were starting to wake up. Lisa saw Mrs. Coleman from across the street peek out her window and then quickly pull the curtain shut. In a small town, scenes like this became public knowledge within an hour. Lisa took out her phone and dialed Mia's number. "He's here," she whispered. "I'm on my way. 5 minutes." But Mia worked at a hospital on the other side of town, and even breaking all the speed limits, she couldn't be there in 5 minutes. Lisa knew that, and Mia knew it too, but the illusion of help was better than nothing. The knocking resumed, more insistent. "Lisa, I brought you flowers. Remember how you loved roses? We had such a good time together. Why have you forgotten everything?" There was a note of desperation in his voice that was more frightening than anger. Desperate people are unpredictable. Lisa dialed 911. "Emergency services. What's happened?" "My ex-boyfriend is at my door and he won't leave. I asked him to leave me alone." "Is he threatening you?" "Not directly." "Ma'am, is he on your property?" "Yes, on the porch." "Is he trying to break into the house?" "No." "If he's not threatening you directly and isn't trying to break down the door, we can only send a patrol to talk to him. That will take about 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Anything could happen in 20 minutes. Lisa hung up and pressed herself against the door again. The knocking stopped, but she could hear Owen pacing on the porch. "Lisa, I'm going to stay here until you come out. I have all day. I have all the time in the world if you won't talk to me." Mia's car screeched to a halt outside the house. Mia jumped out of the car, still in her hospital gown, and headed straight for the porch. "Owen, get out of here, now!" He turned to her, his face a mixture of surprise and hatred. "Here she is, the snake's twin. Come to protect your little sister? I came to tell you that if you don't leave right now, I'm calling the police." I already called, Lisa shouted from behind the door. Owen laughed bitterly. The police? For what? For coming to talk to a woman I dated for 2 years? For stalking, Mia said, taking out her phone and starting to film. For harassment. For not understanding the word no. Owen noticed she was filming and his face contorted. Turn that shit off. Number, let everyone see what you are. Owen took a step toward Mia, but at that moment, sirens blared. A patrol car turned onto Main Street. Owen dropped the roses on the porch and headed for his truck. This isn't over, Lisa, he shouted. We'll talk about this. Officer James Mitchell, a young cop who had been working in Harpersville for only 2 years, got out of the car. He knew the situation from the reports, but he had never seen Owen before. Ma'am, did you call the police? Lisa came out of the house. Mia was still holding her phone. He came to my house at 6:30 this morning. He demanded to talk to me. When I refused to open the door, he said he would wait here until I came out. Mitchell wrote in his notebook. Did he threaten you physically? Not directly. Did he try to break into the house? No. Mitchell sighed. Legally, Owen hadn't broken any laws. Standing on someone else's porch was unethical but not illegal, unless the property owner asked him to leave in the presence of witnesses. Miss Turner, I can talk to Mr. Powell, explain the situation to him, but until he threatens you directly or violates a restraining order, our options are limited. How do we get a restraining order? Mia asked. You need to go to court with documentary evidence of harassment, phone calls, messages, witness statements. The process could take several weeks. Several weeks. Mia imagined several weeks of morning visits, late-night phone calls, constant fear. What if he does something before then? Mitchell looked at her sympathetically. He had seen women like her before, smart, successful, but helpless against a system that couldn't protect them until something serious happened. Then call 911 immediately and document everything, every call, every visit, every message. After the police left, the sisters sat in the kitchen with cups of cold coffee. Mia studied the video she had taken. There's not much here, she said. He didn't say anything specifically threatening. The threat was in his eyes, Lisa replied quietly. In the way he looked at me. I know. But the court won't accept testimony about a threatening look. Lisa stood up and began pacing the kitchen. I have to talk to him. Explain once and for all that it's over. Lisa, no, it's dangerous. What else can I do? Hide in the house? Wait until he does something that finally gets the police involved? Mia understood her sister's frustration, but her fear for her safety was stronger. Then I'll go with you. Number. He hates you even more than he hates me. Your presence will only make things worse. Lisa. Mia. I'm a grown woman. I'm a school psychologist. I know how to talk to difficult people. Maybe if I explain it to him calmly, without getting emotional, he'll understand. Mia knew her sister was wishful thinking. Owen Powell was far beyond the realm of rational argument. But Lisa had a strong character. When she made up her mind, it was impossible to change it. Then let's meet him in a public place. Thomas's bar, for example, with witnesses. Lisa nodded. It was a compromise she could live with. That same day, around 6 in the evening, Lisa sent Owen a text message. Meet me at the Old Oak at 7. Last conversation. The reply came instantly. I'll be there. Mia insisted on arriving at the bar early and sitting at a table in the corner. Not to interfere, but to be nearby in case things got out of hand. Thomas Green noticed the tension as soon as Lisa entered the bar. She looked determined, but her hands were shaking as she ordered a glass of water. Everything okay? He asked. I'll find out soon. Owen showed up at 7 sharp. He looked better than he had in the morning. He had showered, changed, even shaved. But his eyes were still red, and his movements were too sharp for someone who was calm. He sat down across from Lisa at a small table by the window. Mia watched from the corner, Thomas from behind the bar. Several other patrons glanced their way surreptitiously. Thanks for coming, Owen said. Owen, we need to end this, for good. I don't understand what happened. We were happy. Lisa took a deep breath. She had rehearsed this speech all day. In the beginning, maybe. But then everything changed. You became too controlling. Calls every hour, checking where I was and who I was with. That's not love, Owen. That's possessiveness. I was just afraid of losing you. And that's exactly what happened. Owen clenched his fists on the table. This is because of your sister, isn't it? She turned you against me. Mia has nothing to do with this. This is my decision. Lies. You two are like Siamese twins. She can't stand the fact that you have a man. Owen's voice grew louder. The conversations in the bar died down. Owen, calm down. Don't tell me to calm down. 2 years of my life. 2 years I loved you, cared for you, and you throw it all away because of your jealous sister. Thomas approached their table. Guys, maybe you should lower your voices. Owen turned sharply toward him. This is none of your business, Thomas. It's my bar, so it is my business. Mia stood up and headed for the table, but Lisa stopped her with a gesture. Owen, listen to me, Lisa said quietly but firmly. This relationship is over. I don't want to see you. I don't want to talk to you. If you really loved me, you'd leave me alone. Owen looked at her for a long time, and something changed in his eyes. Pain turned to rage, love to hate. So that's how it is, he said finally. So all these 2 years have meant nothing. They meant a lot, but now it's over. Owen stood up so abruptly that his chair fell over. Nothing is over until I say it's over. He slammed his fist on the table. Lisa's glass of water fell and shattered. Thomas took a step forward. Owen, you need to leave. Now. Or what? Call the police? Tell them I broke a glass? Mia was already dialing 911, but she knew the police would arrive too late if Owen decided to act. Go, Owen, Thomas repeated, this time more firmly. Owen looked at Lisa one last time. This isn't the end, he said quietly, but loud enough for everyone to hear. If I can't be with you, then no one can. He turned and left the bar, slamming the door behind him. In the silence that followed, everyone looked at Lisa. She sat motionless, staring at the broken glass. Mia came over and hugged her sister. It's okay, she whispered. It's over. But they both knew that wasn't true. It was only just beginning. An hour later, Detective Harris arrived at the bar. Thomas had called him after Owen left. Tell me what happened, Harris said, sitting down at the table with the sisters. Lisa recounted the conversation, including Owen's final threat. If I can't be with you, no one can, Harris repeated. In front of witnesses? In front of the whole bar, Thomas confirmed. Harris nodded. Finally, he had something concrete. That qualifies as a threat. I can get a warrant for his arrest. Lisa felt relieved for the first time in weeks. How long will he spend in jail? A few days for a first offense, maybe a week if the judge takes the circumstances into account. A few days. It wasn't enough, but it was better than nothing. And then? Then there will be a trial. We'll ask for a restraining order. If he violates it, the consequences will be more serious. Harris was honest with himself. He had seen enough cases to know that a restraining order was just a piece of paper. If a man was determined to act, a piece of paper wouldn't stop him. But it was the only tool the system provided. Late that evening, Harris and Officer Mitchell arrived at Owen's house. It was a small, single-story house in a working-class neighborhood with an unkempt lawn and an old truck in the driveway. Owen opened the door, holding a can of beer in his hand. The smell made it clear that it wasn't his first. Ray, James, what brings you to my humble abode? Owen Powell, you are under arrest for threats and harassment. Harris read him his rights while Mitchell handcuffed him. Owen didn't resist, just laughed. Threats? I told the truth. If I can't be happy, why should she be? Anything you say can be used against you in court, Harris reminded him. Let them use it. I have nothing to hide." As they drove to the police station, Owen continued talking. "You don't understand, Ray. You don't just throw away 2 years of love. Things like that have consequences." Harris didn't respond, but every word Owen said only reinforced his belief that this man was dangerous. That night, Lisa slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. Owen was in jail, albeit briefly. Mia stayed the night at the house on Main Street, and the sisters fell asleep in the same room, just like they did when they were children during a thunderstorm. But at 3 in the morning, Lisa was awakened by the ringing of the phone. It was an unknown number. She didn't answer, but a voice message came through a minute later. "Hey, sunshine. One call is all I'm allowed, but I want you to know that I'll be out of here very soon, and when I get out, we'll finish our conversation." Lisa woke Mia and played the message on speakerphone. "How did he get a phone in jail?" Mia whispered. "He probably asked someone to call for him." They both knew that Owen's arrest was only temporary. The real problems would begin when he got out. On the morning of October 18th, Detective Ray Harris received the call he had been dreading. Judge Margaret Stone had released Owen Powell on $500 bail. 3 days in the county jail, and he was a free man again. The terms of his release? Harris asked the court clerk. A temporary restraining order prohibiting him from coming within 100 yards of Lisa Turner. No contact. Next hearing in 2 weeks. 100 yards. In a town the size of Harpersville, that meant Owen couldn't go to most of the places Lisa might be, but it also meant he could live in his house, just a few blocks away from her. Harris immediately called Lisa. "Miss Turner, he's out. Officially, he can't come near you, but I recommend you be extra careful." Lisa was sitting in the teacher's lounge at Harpersville High School during lunch break. Her colleagues were discussing their weekend plans, and she was receiving news that turned her life into a nightmare. What does that mean in practical terms? If you see him, call 911 immediately. Don't try to talk to him. Don't try to reason with him. Just walk away and call us. What if he shows up at my house? Same thing. We have grounds for immediate arrest if he violates the restraining order. But Harris knew how the system worked. Anything could happen before the police arrived. After the call, Lisa contacted Mia, who was working the day shift at the hospital. "He's out," she said without preamble. There was silence on the other end of the line. "I'll pick you up after work," Mia finally said. "We'll go to my place." "Mia, I can't hide for the rest of my life." "Not for the rest of your life. Just until he gets locked up for good." But both sisters knew how naive those words were. The justice system moved slowly, and the danger was here and now. Meanwhile, Owen Powell stood on the steps of the courthouse, squinting in the bright sun. 3 days in a prison cell had changed him. He had lost weight, his eyes were sunken, but most importantly, the last remnants of doubt had disappeared. He had had time to think in his cell, and he had come to a simple conclusion. If Lisa didn't want to be with him, she wouldn't be with anyone. His first stop was Joe's pawn shop on the outskirts of town. Joe McCarthy, the pawnbroker, had been selling used goods for 30 years. Guns were only part of his business, but they were the most profitable. "Owen Powell," Joe said when Owen entered the shop. "I hear you're in trouble." "Just a minor misunderstanding," Owen replied. "I need a gun." Joe frowned. He knew about the situation with Lisa Turner. News traveled fast in a small town. "What for?" "For protection. You never know." Technically, Joe had the right to sell a gun to any adult citizen with no criminal record. Owen technically fit the criteria. His arrest for making threats had not yet resulted in a conviction. "You'll need to fill out some forms," Joe said reluctantly. While Owen filled out the paperwork, Joe thought about it. Something about the buyer's behavior bothered him. Owen's hands were shaking, his eyes were darting around, and he crossed out what he had written several times. "Listen, Owen," Joe said cautiously. "Maybe you should wait until things settle down." Owen looked up sharply. I have the right to buy a gun. Yes, you do, but no buts. Sell it or say you can't. Joe sighed and pulled a .38 caliber Smith & Wesson from under the counter. It was an old but reliable revolver. $250 plus tax. Owen counted out the money and hid the gun in his jacket. Joe watched him leave, then took out his phone. Ray? It's Joe McCarthy. Owen Powell just bought a gun from me. Thought you should know. Harris received the call while he was patrolling the school district. Damn, he cursed and turned toward Lisa's house. But Owen didn't drive to the house on Main Street. Instead, he headed for Harpersville High School. It was around 3 o'clock, just as school was letting out. Lisa was walking out of the school building when she saw the familiar truck in the parking lot. Her heart skipped a beat. Owen was sitting behind the wheel, staring straight at her. She took out her phone and dialed 911 without stopping to walk to her car. But Owen got out of the truck and headed toward her. Lisa, wait. Don't come near me, she shouted. You have a restraining order. Several students and colleagues turned toward them. Jenny Watson, an English teacher, instinctively stepped between Lisa and Owen. Sir, you need to leave, Jenny said. This is none of your business, Owen replied. But he stopped. Lisa used the moment of confusion to run to her car. She started the engine and drove out of the parking lot, but in the rearview mirror she saw Owen returning to his truck. 911, what's going on? This is Lisa Turner. Owen Powell violated a restraining order. He was at the school. Where are you now? I'm driving home. Don't go home. Go to the police station. But when Lisa turned toward the station, she saw Owen's truck headlights in her mirror. He was following her. Fear turned to panic. Lisa stepped on the gas, but the truck was more powerful than her sedan. The distance between the cars was closing. At that moment, her phone rang. It was Mia. Lisa, where are you? I'm at the school, but you're not there. He's following me, Lisa said, trying not to scream. I'm going to the police station. I'll meet you there. But when Lisa pulled up to the police station, Owen's truck suddenly turned onto a side street and disappeared. She sat in her car in the station parking lot, shaking from the adrenaline. Detective Harris came out of the building 5 minutes later. Miss Turner, tell me what happened. Lisa recounted the incident at the school and the chase. Do we have any witnesses at the school? Jenny Watson saw everything. Good. That's enough for an arrest warrant. We'll find him. But finding Owen proved more difficult than expected. He wasn't at home, and his truck wasn't in its usual places. Harris sent patrols to check the old Oak Bar, his ex-wife's house, and his friends' workplaces. No luck. Mia arrived at the police station half an hour after Lisa. The sisters were sitting in Harris's office holding hands. Where could he be? Mia asked. We're checking all possible locations, Harris replied. But Harpersville is big to search on foot, and we only have 3 patrol cars. What if he's waiting at my house? We've got a car watching it. If he shows up, we'll take him. But Owen was smarter than they thought. He knew the police would be watching Lisa's house. So he chose a place where no one would expect to see him, an abandoned factory on the outskirts of town where textiles had once been made. The building had been closed for 10 years, but Owen knew how to get inside. He had often come here with his friends when he was younger. He sat in the empty workshop with a gun in his hands and thought. The plan was simple. Wait until dark, approach Lisa's house from the back, where there was no police surveillance. If she didn't want to talk, well, he had a way to make the conversation final. Around 7 in the evening, Mia felt what had always frightened her most about their twin connection, a sudden terror that belonged not to her, but to Lisa. Something's wrong, she told Harris. What do you mean? Lisa's in danger. I can feel it. Harris was used to facts, not intuition, but in this situation, he was willing to accept any help he could get. Where is she? At home. I took her there an hour ago. Harris grabbed his radio. Patrol 2, report on the situation at the Turner residence. All quiet, lights on, no movement. But Mia knew something was going on. Her sister's instincts had never failed her. "I'm going to her," she said, standing up. "Miss Turner, you'd better wait here." "No. If something happens to Lisa while I'm sitting here, I'll never forgive myself." Harris realized he couldn't stop her. "Then I'm coming with you." They left the station at 7:20 p.m. It was a 5-minute drive to the house on Main Street. Meanwhile, Owen Powell was making his way out of an abandoned factory and heading for his truck. In his jacket pocket was a revolver, and in his head was a plan from which there was no turning back. Lisa sat in the living room of her parents' house trying to read, but the words blurred before her eyes. Every sound made her jump, the creaking of the floorboards, the wind rustling the curtains, the distant barking of dogs. A police car was parked on the street in front of the house, and that should have been reassuring. But the fear was irrational, primal. It lived somewhere deep in her stomach and poisoned every breath she took. At 7:25 p.m., she heard a sound that made her blood run cold, the creak of the back door. Someone had entered the house. Lisa grabbed her phone and ran to the front door, but heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, confident footsteps of someone who knew the layout of the house. "Lisa," a familiar voice said, "we need to talk." Owen entered the living room. In his right hand, he held a gun pointed at the floor. For now. "How did you get in?" Lisa whispered. "The back door. Remember, you gave me a key last year? I made a copy." Lisa slowly backed toward the window. A police car was outside, but the officers were looking down the street, not at the house. "Owen, you're under a restraining order. You'll be arrested." "I'll be arrested either way," he replied calmly. "After what I'm about to do." He raised the gun, but didn't point it at Lisa yet. "It didn't have to end like this," he said sadly. "We could have been happy." "We still can be," Lisa said quickly, using her skills as a school psychologist. "Put the gun down and we'll talk." Owen laughed. "Talk? I've been trying to talk to you for 2 years. You wouldn't listen. I listened. We just wanted different things. I only wanted one thing, for you to love me." "I did love you," Lisa said, and it was true. She had loved him at first. "But love doesn't have to hurt. And breaking up doesn't hurt?" Owen asked, his voice filled with all the pain of the last few months. At that moment, another car pulled up outside, Harris and Mia. Owen heard the doors slam and tensed. "Your little sister came to save you?" "Owen, please. It's too late for please." He raised the gun and pointed it at Lisa. Outside, Mia ran toward the house, knowing she was seconds away from a moment that could change everything. 7:27 p.m. Detective Ray Harris and Mia Turner ran up to the police car parked outside 847 Main Street. "What's going on?" Harris asked Officer Mitchell. "Everything's quiet. The lights are on, but no one's been seen." Mia looked at the house and felt something cold squeeze her heart. Her twin intuition screamed danger. "He's there," she said. "He's inside." "Are you sure?" "Absolutely." Harris took out his radio. "All patrols, code 3, 847 Main Street. Possible home invasion." At that moment, a muffled scream came from inside the house. All three ran to the front door. Harris tried to open it. It was locked. He motioned for Mitchell to go around the back of the house while he prepared to break down the door. Inside, Owen was holding the gun pointed at Lisa. His hand was shaking, but his finger was on the trigger. 2 years, he repeated, like a mantra. 2 years of my life. "Owen, please think about what you're doing," Lisa said, trying to keep her voice calm. "I spent 3 days in jail. You know what I came to?" Lisa was silent. "If I can't be happy, neither will you." Shadows of police officers flashed outside the window. Owen noticed the movement and his face contorted. "Did you bring your friends?" "I didn't call anyone." "You're lying!" The front door rattled under the blows. Harris was trying to break it down. Owen turned to the window, then back to Lisa. There was something final in his eyes, a point of no return. "Goodbye, Lisa." "No, please." A shot rang out at 7:29 p.m. A 38 caliber bullet hit Lisa in the face from a distance of 2 meters. Death was instantaneous. Harris broke down the door a second after the shot. He burst into the house with his gun raised, but it was too late. Lisa was lying on the living room floor in a pool of blood. Owen stood over her with the gun in his hand, looking at what he had done. "Drop the gun!" Harris shouted. Owen slowly turned toward the detective. There was no remorse on his face, only emptiness. "She wouldn't listen to me," he said quietly. "Drop the gun now!" Owen looked at the gun in his hand, then at Lisa's body. "What now?" he asked, more to himself than to Harris. He slowly put the revolver on the floor and raised his hands. Mia rushed into the house after Harris and saw what had destroyed her world. Her twin sister, the other half of her soul, lay dead on the floor of the house where they had grown up. The scream that escaped her throat was inhuman. It was the sound of a heart breaking in two. She fell to her knees next to Lisa's body, ignoring the blood. "Lisa, no, please, no!" Harris handcuffed Owen, who stood motionless, staring into space. "Owen Powell, you are under arrest for first-degree murder." Owen did not respond. Mitchell called an ambulance and the coroner, although both knew that nothing could be done to help Lisa. Mia was still holding her sister's lifeless body when the medics entered the house. Harris had to literally drag her away from the body. "Miss Turner, you need to step away. Let them do their work." "She's dead," Mia whispered. "I feel empty. Completely empty." The bond between the twins that had connected them for 31 years was broken forever. Harris led Mia out of the house and sat her in his car. She sat motionless, staring at a single point. "Miss Turner, is there anyone I can call? Anyone in your family?" Mia slowly turned her head toward him. "I have no family. There was only Lisa." News of the murder spread through Harpersville like wildfire. By midnight, a crowd of onlookers had gathered outside the house on Main Street. Harris set up a cordon, but it didn't stop people from coming. Thomas Green closed the Old Oak Bar early and drove to the scene. He felt personally responsible. It was in his establishment that Owen had made the threat that had become reality. "Is there anything we can do?" he asked Harris. "Pray that there won't be any more like this." By the next morning, the entire procedure was complete. Lisa's body was sent to the county morgue for an autopsy, although the cause of death was obvious. Owen was placed in a solitary cell in the county jail under observation, given the risk of suicide. Mia spent the night in the hospital under sedation. Her colleagues took turns keeping vigil at her bedside, understanding that the loss of a twin was a trauma of a special kind. Lisa's funeral was scheduled for October 22nd. The entire school closed for the day. St. Paul's Church could not accommodate everyone who wanted to say goodbye to the young woman who had dedicated her life to helping children. Mia sat alone in the front row. The coffin was closed. The shot to the face made an open farewell impossible. Reverend David Morris, who had baptized the twins 31 years earlier, conducted the service. "Lisa Turner lived to help others," he said. As a school psychologist, she saw the pain in children's eyes and did everything she could to heal it. The tragedy is that she couldn't heal the pain that ultimately killed her. After the service, Mia remained alone at the grave. Detective Harris approached her as the last people dispersed. "How are you feeling?" "Like part of me is buried here," she replied, her eyes fixed on the fresh mound of earth. "Miss Turner, I know this isn't the time, but I'm going to need to talk to you. It's about the case." Mia turned to him. "What case? You caught the killer. He confessed." "Yes, but there are procedures. The court will need your testimony." "The court?" Mia laughed bitterly. "The same system that failed to protect Lisa now wants justice?" Harris understood her bitterness. The system had indeed failed. "I know how it sounds, but we have to see this through." Mia nodded and left, leaving Harris alone in the cemetery. The next 2 days were spent in routine investigation. Harris interviewed all the witnesses, gathered evidence, and wrote reports. The case was straightforward: a murder motivated by jealousy, multiple witnesses, a confession from the suspect. Owen sat in his cell and said almost nothing. The court-appointed lawyer tried to work with him, but Owen refused to discuss a defense. "I killed her," he said during his only interview. "What else do you need to know?" "Mr. Powell, you are facing life imprisonment or the death penalty. We need to discuss a defense strategy." "There is no strategy. I did what I did." The psychiatrist who examined Owen found him sane at the time of the crime. Depressed, certainly, but not psychotic. On October 25th, 3 days after Lisa's funeral, the officer on duty found Owen dead in his cell. Harris got a call at 6 in the morning. "Detective, you need to come to the prison. We have a problem." Harris arrived 20 minutes later. Prison warden James Wilson met him at the entrance. "What happened?" "Powell is dead. The guard found him an hour ago." "Suicide?" "It looks like it. He hanged himself with a sheet." Harris inspected the cell. Owen was hanging from a sheet tied to the ventilation grill. On the table was a note with a single sentence: "Couldn't live with what I did." "Who was on duty?" "Officer Rodriguez. He checked the cells every 30 minutes as required by protocol." "When was Powell last seen alive?" "Everything was fine at 5 in the morning. He was found at 5:30. Harris nodded. Half an hour was enough time to make a noose and kill himself. But something bothered him. He couldn't figure out what it was. "I need to examine the cell more closely." Harris examined every inch of the small cell. The sheet had been torn into strips and tied into a rope. The knot was professional, not the kind usually made by suicidal people. Did Powell have any experience with sailing? Mountain climbing? "I don't know. We'll have to check." Harris photographed the knot from different angles. Something wasn't right here. He left the prison and drove straight to Mia's house. She opened the door in her bathrobe, her eyes red from crying. "Miss Turner, I'm sorry to bother you, but there's news about the case." "What news?" "Owen Powell is dead. He committed suicide in his cell this morning." Mia showed no emotion. She just nodded. "Okay. Miss Turner, I need to ask you a few questions." "About what?" "About your whereabouts last night." Mia looked up sharply. "Are you suspecting me of murdering a prisoner?" "I'm just following protocol. With any death in prison, we have to rule out all possibilities." "I was at home, alone, taking sleeping pills. Is there anyone who can confirm that?" "No." Harris wrote the answer in his notebook. "Did you know the guards at the prison? Did you have access to the building?" "Detective Harris," Mia said firmly. "If I wanted to kill Owen Powell, I wouldn't have waited for him to be arrested. I would have done it right after he killed my sister." "Logical." Harris closed his notebook. "Sorry to bother you, it's just a formality." "I understand." But when Harris left, Mia stood at the window for a long time, watching his car drive away. Something about his questions had made her wary. The official investigation into Owen's death took 2 weeks. The coroner ruled it a suicide. No signs of a struggle, no signs of foul play. The note was written in Owen's hand. But Harris couldn't shake his doubts. The knot was too professional. Besides, according to the prison psychologist, Owen had shown no suicidal tendencies after his arrest. He was depressed, but not suicidal, Dr. Clark said. More apathetic. He had accepted what he had done and was waiting for his trial. People can hide suicidal thoughts. Of course. But there are usually signs. Powell showed none. Harris decided to dig deeper. He checked the prison visit records for the last few days of Owen's life. His lawyer had visited twice. No one else. He studied the guards' schedules. Officer Rodriguez had been with the prison for 5 years. No complaints. But Harris noticed an interesting detail. Rodriguez had a daughter who attended Harpersville High School, the same school where Lisa worked. The next day, Harris went to Rodriguez's house. "Officer, can we talk?" "Sure. What about?" The night Powell died. Rodriguez tensed, almost imperceptibly. I already gave a statement. I know, I just want to clarify some details. They sat down on the porch of Rodriguez's house. It was a cool, late October day. Did your daughter know Lisa Turner? Yes, she did. Miss Turner helped her through a difficult period last year. Problems with classmates. I can imagine how hard it was to hear about her death. Very hard. Anna cried all night after the funeral. Harris nodded. Tell me, on the night Powell died, did you check his cell strictly according to schedule? Every 30 minutes as required. And between checks? No one was near his cell? Rodriguez hesitated. Well, the nurse came by, routine rounds. A nurse? At 5 in the morning? Night shift, checking on inmates who take medication. Was Powell taking medication? Antidepressants, prescribed by the prison doctor. Harris felt something click in his mind. What was the nurse's name? I don't remember. She's new. Only been working there a few days. Describe her. Average height, brown hair, nothing special. The description fit half the women in Harpersville, but Harris had a hunch. Do you have any records of visits by medical personnel? They should be in the log. They drove to the prison. Harris studied the logbook for the night of Owen's death. The nurse had signed as M. Johnson. The handwriting was neat and professional. Did you check her credentials? Why? She was in uniform and knew the procedures. Harris asked for a copy of the surveillance camera footage. The quality was poor, but he could make out the figure of a woman in medical uniform entering the cell block at 4:45 a.m. Her face was not visible. She was walking away from the camera. But there was one detail that caught Harris's attention. There was a small scar on the woman's left arm. On the morning of October 26th, Detective Ray Harris sat in his office studying photos from the prison's surveillance cameras. The woman in the medical uniform had entered the cell block at 4:45 a.m., half an hour before Owen Powell's body was discovered. The scar on her left arm was barely visible in the blurry footage, but it was enough for Harris. He had known Mia Turner since childhood. He knew the story behind the scar, a fall from a bicycle when the twins were 7 years old. Lisa had cried more than the injured Mia. Harris picked up the phone and called St. Mary's Hospital. I need information about an employee named Mia Turner, her work schedule for the last week. One moment, Miss Turner has been on leave since October 19th due to family circumstances. Was she on duty on the night of October 25th? No, definitely not. She hasn't worked since the day her sister died. Harris hung up. The last piece of the puzzle fell into place. He drove to Mia's house around noon. She opened the door, looking exhausted. She had dark circles under her eyes and her face was gaunt. Detective, more formalities? Can I come in? Mia stepped aside to let him in. There were boxes in the living room. She was packing. Are you moving? I can't live here anymore. Too many memories. Harris sat down in an armchair. Mia remained standing. Miss Turner, I need to ask you a direct question. Go ahead. Did you kill Owen Powell? Mia didn't flinch. She looked at him calmly, almost with relief. Why are you asking if you already know the answer? I need to hear it. Mia sat down on the sofa opposite him. Yes, I killed him. Harris turned on the tape recorder. Mia Turner, I have to read you your rights. No need, she interrupted. I'll tell you everything. Harris nodded and put the rights card aside. Tell me how it happened. Mia took a deep breath. The night after the funeral, I couldn't sleep. I lay there thinking about how he was alive and breathing, and Lisa was gone. It didn't seem right. It wasn't fair. And you decided to take action? I decided that if the system couldn't deliver justice, I would. How did you end up in jail? I have a friend, Sarah Hendricks. She's a nurse at the county jail. She was on vacation that week. I took her uniform and ID. The guards didn't suspect anything? I've been a nurse for 10 years. I know how to behave. I told them I was new, a temporary replacement. People are less careful at night. Harris wrote down every word. What happened in Powell's cell? Mia stood up and walked over to the window. He was asleep. I woke him up and said I was there to give him his medicine. He recognized me and smiled. He smiled? Yes. He said, "Here's my little sister. Come visit me?" He wasn't remorseful, Detective. Not at all. What happened next? I took out the syringe with succinylcholine. It's a muscle relaxant. In large doses, it causes respiratory paralysis. Harris knew that drug. It's the perfect weapon for a medic. Death looks natural if you don't know what to look for. But you staged a suicide. Succinylcholine leaves traces in an autopsy if you know what to look for. I had to cover up the cause of death. You injected him? Yes. He tried to call security, but the drug works quickly. Within a minute, he couldn't move, just stared at me. And then you made the noose? Yes. I knew how to tie nautical knots. My father taught Lisa and me when we were children. I waited until he died of suffocation, then hung the body. Harris finished writing and looked at Mia. Why are you confessing? You could have denied it. Mia turned to him. Because I did what I had to do. Lisa is dead. Owen is dead. The score is even. Do you understand that you could face life in prison? I do. But I don't care. Without Lisa, I'm not living, just existing. Harris stood up and took out a pair of handcuffs. Mia Turner, you're under arrest for the murder of Owen Powell. She held out her hands and he snapped the cuffs on. Detective? Yes? Would you have done the same thing in my place? Harris didn't answer. Some questions don't have right answers. The news of Mia's arrest shook Harpersville more than Lisa's murder. A crime of passion was an understandable tragedy, but revenge by a twin sister seemed like something from another world. Thomas Green closed the bar for the day. He felt that his establishment had set off a chain of events that led to 2 deaths. If I hadn't let them meet back then, he told his wife, if I had kicked Owen out right away. You couldn't have known, she replied. No one could have. But the guilt remained. Owen Powell's funeral took place on October 30th. It was a simple service at the funeral home. His ex-wife had refused to bury him in the family plot. Few people attended. A few colleagues from the factory, old friends who felt obliged to come. The atmosphere was oppressive. Everyone understood that they were burying a murderer. At 11:30, when the service was supposed to begin, a police car pulled up at the entrance. Harris got out of the passenger seat and opened the back door. Mia Turner, in handcuffs and prison garb, slowly made her way to the chapel entrance. The crowd parted. Some whispered, others just stared. Mia walked down the center aisle and sat in the back row. Harris sat next to her. Reverend Morris, who had buried Lisa a week ago, stood at the pulpit, not knowing what to say. How do you talk about a man who killed an innocent woman? How do you find words of comfort for a murderer? Owen Powell was a complicated man, he began. He committed an unforgivable act, but before God we are all sinners. Mia sat motionless, staring at the coffin. Her face was expressionless. Vengeance belongs to the Lord, the Reverend continued, glancing at Mia. It is not for us to judge and punish. After these words, Mia stood up. May I say something? She asked the priest. He hesitated, then nodded. Mia walked up to the pulpit. Harris remained nearby, ready to intervene. My name is Mia Turner, she said, addressing the small crowd. Owen Powell killed my twin sister, and I killed him. A dead silence fell over the chapel. I didn't come here to ask for forgiveness, Mia continued. I came to say that justice has been served. Lisa was a good person. She helped children and cared for others. Owen took her life out of selfishness and jealousy. She looked at the coffin. I don't regret what I did. The only thing I regret is that I couldn't protect Lisa while she was alive. Mia returned to her seat. The service continued in heavy silence. As the coffin was carried to the grave, Mia followed behind in handcuffs. People looked at her with a mixture of horror and understanding. At the grave, the Reverend read the final prayer. When the coffin was lowered into the ground, Mia threw a handful of dirt and whispered something that only Harris could hear. "Now, we're even." After the funeral, Harris drove Mia back to prison. "Do you feel relieved?" he asked on the way. "I feel empty," Mia replied. "But it's not his fault. The emptiness came when Lisa died. Owen's death didn't fill it." "Then why did you do it?" "Because some things can't go unpunished." Mia's trial took place in March of the following year. She pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, avoiding a more serious charge thanks to mitigating circumstances. The judge sentenced her to 25 years in prison. "Mrs. Turner," he said as he handed down the sentence, "I understand your pain, but the law is the law. We cannot allow people to take the law into their own hands, no matter how understandable their motives may be." Mia accepted the sentence without emotion. Harris visited her in prison several times during the first year. She worked in the prison hospital helping other inmates. "How are you?" he would ask. "I'm used to it," she would reply. "Here, I don't think about Lisa. It's a different life here." 5 years later, Harris retired. On his last day of work, he drove to the Harpersville Cemetery. Lisa Turner's grave was well tended. Someone brought fresh flowers regularly, probably colleagues from the school or students she had helped. Owen Powell's grave was in a far corner of the cemetery, overgrown with grass, without flowers, almost forgotten. Harris stood between the two graves and thought about justice. The system had failed Lisa by failing to protect her. But had it failed Mia by punishing her for taking the law into her own hands? There were no right answers. Life went on in the town. New tragedies overshadowed the old ones. But those who remembered passed on the story of the Turner sisters and Owen Powell as a warning about where love turned into obsession could lead. Thomas Green sold the bar and moved to another state. There were too many memories. And in the state women's prison, Mia Turner continued to live, work, and wait. She wasn't waiting for her release. She knew she would be an old woman by the time she got out. She was waiting for the day she would see Lisa again. Because Mia believed that the bond between twins was stronger than death. And every night, as she fell asleep in her prison cell, she felt her sister's presence nearby. Vague, fleeting, but real. Justice had been served. The price was the lives of all three.